of handmade business can be tough when trying to monetize what you love. We've got truth bombs and motivation to help you find your way through. Passion to profit, let's start today, 'cause the world needs what you create. Tune in right now, it's your shot to learn how to be a handmade boss.
Hello everyone, I'm Steph and I help handmade business owners start, run and scale their handmade business from expensive hobby to six figures and beyond on Etsy and your own website. I help over 126,000 business owners every single week with my free advice. And I have an Amazon best-selling book, a Facebook group, an Instagram profile where everything is popping off, as well as weekly lives and a bunch of other good stuff as well. And if you'd like to see more of what we're all about, then head to handmadebosses.com and you'll find everything you need there, from paid resources, freebies, results we get, and all that good stuff as well. But today we are talking about the great I versus we debate. I feel like this is a question that I get asked a lot, especially during lives and stuff. I just seem to get this question of, should I be using I or should I be saying we? Surely we sounds a little bit better, but then am I not being, genuine by saying it's we when it's just me? How does it work? Which one should I be using? So we're going to be going through each of these and just kind of weighing up the pros and cons and seeing maybe which one would be better for you. But before we get into that, I would love it if you would subscribe to this podcast. It really makes my day, and I get to see each and every one of you subscribe and just enjoy the podcast because it is something that does help us be seen by more people. I'm not going to lie, it's how the algorithm works, which as business owners yourselves, you kind of know the ins and outs and how much of a struggle sometimes it can be to get your stuff seen and heard. So that would be awesome. So let's get into the great I versus we debate. I feel like with handmade business owners, we are very, very used to kind of seeing a lot of big businesses saying we and saying we do this and we do that and our mission is this and the team and I, and all kind of language around that, right? So I guess sometimes as business owners, we sort of think that we have to use language like that. We have to make ourselves look bigger. However, using the word I, what are the pros and cons of that? Well, saying I is great for those who are a personal brand or who are looking to grow their brand more on a face-to-face and face recognition, I suppose, level, right? So if you think of Handmade Bosses, okay, whenever you see my face, you think of Handmade Bosses. Whenever you see Handmade Bosses, you think of my face. They're kind of intertwined, right? You will see, and I know it sounds really egotistical, but this is just the way it is with personal brands. Whenever you go onto the website, any of my paid resources, any freebies, you will see a lot of pictures of me, because that is what you are going to get when you invest with us. You're going to get a bit of me. You're going to get access to the knowledge and all that good stuff. When you show up on Monday Live, you're going to see my face. When you watch Reels, you're going to see my face. So there's a lot to be said for including your face and kind of maybe even using your name when you're looking to build more of a personal brand. You're looking to grow trust in you as a person. You are very linked to your business, okay? It's also really good for people who are looking to build trust in themselves. I do feel like when you say we, it gives you corporate vibes. It gives you, I'm going to be talking to lots of different people. It's giving you a lot of, it's a corporation I'm talking to. It's a team I'm talking to rather than a person. Yeah. So if you are someone who is serving those who may have been burned before, they might have some trust issues with buying your product online, then saying I is actually a really good way of building trust within you. But it does mean that you can sound a little less formal at times, because obviously we're not walking around saying to whom it may concern and kind regards all the time. We are humans, and we swear and we shout and we say funny things, and we are who we are. So it's a really good idea to kind of just think of your brand as, okay, what's the personality here? What am I trying to get across? Do I envision growing my business beyond just me? Do I envision injecting a lot of my personality into my business? And how does the trust fit into this? How does the connections that I want to build with people fit into all of this, right? So some really good examples might be is actually if you go and view some influencers or accounts that you know where they're using their name and or they're putting a lot of their face into their brand, just have a little think about them and just sort of think back to how would your relationship with them change if they started saying we and us and our and team and words like that, where you're sort of thinking, okay, there's more than one person. How would that make you feel? Okay. So I want to go through an example with you. So Lydia is an artist who sells fantasy animal paintings. She gets featured with her own name in a local gallery and she says I and uses her own name in her business. So in that example, it's a perfect fit, right, for Lydia to say I and myself, and is very singular, right? Because it's her name on her painting. She's the one who is making these things, okay? And let's just go through some pros and cons, right, of using the word I. So some pros for using I. It does convey authenticity and a personal connection that I think you kind of lose when you start to use the we language, when you start to kind of say there's more than one person. It also does emphasize the individual's expertise, and it really does make you think you're talking directly to a person. Like from a customer's point of view, you're like, I'm going to go and talk to Steph because Steph knows her stuff and I know that Steph knows what she's talking about. But that can change when you're like, oh, I'm going to go talk to Team HB because Team HB knows what they're talking about, okay? And I just feel like when you are talking to people, whether that's on email, DM, if you sign it off as just your name and it's just you, then maybe actually that client feels comfortable sharing that stuff because they know that they're talking to just you and they know you, right? Another pro is it does communicate that you have confidence in your abilities. And it's almost like I paint and I'm blimmin' good at it. It's very much like if you say we, sometimes, you don't really know who you're going to get and people's capabilities on that team might differ. But if you're just saying I, then, through marketing, social media, whatever, that person already knows that you're good at what you do. Therefore, they know they're going to get a good product, service, insert thing here. Now, another pro here is the obvious one, which is if you are calling your business after your own name, then it's going to be obvious that you're going to say I, because if it's just your name, then it's just you. And again, I really do think that the two working together, if it is just your name, and if you are just saying I, it just really deepens that connection, and all these pros kind of just get deeper. Okay, but let's talk about some cons now. So some cons, and a surprising one is that studies have shown that if you are saying I and it is just your name and you're kind of being very upfront about the fact that it is just you, studies have shown that actually people are more likely to try to negotiate pricing and try to kind of beat you down on price. And it's where actually you might get messages such as, oh, it's too expensive. Will you do it for this? Because they know that they're not talking to a team where it has to go through like layers and layers and layers of different people's opinions. They're just talking to an individual. And I know it's quite an interesting one. And I'd be really interested to hear your experiences with this, because I have to say that whenever I've run or started a business where it's just been my name, it's always been a bit like, yeah, I do sort of feel that, yeah? Another con is it could lead to expectations outside of what you're already giving. So what do I mean by this? It means they might expect you to be available after hours. It might mean that they expect more from you because they know that you're just an individual. It might lead people to how can I say this, but like take advantage of you because they're like, oh, it's just one person, she'll be all right, you know. Another con is you might actually limit yourself for larger projects. So whenever people are looking for like corporate gifts, wholesale, 9 times out of 10, businesses are looking for we people. They are looking for a team. They're looking for those who they know can fulfill their order, right? So if that is part of your eventual business model, aka wholesale, corporate gifts, selling in bulk, whatever, just think about your future business. Are you going to want to be doing any of those things? Because if you are, it might be worth just having a little think about it. Now, the last thing, which is the obvious one, I guess, is that if you say or do something wrong, let's say you accidentally have a bad day, you do a live and you say something that perhaps you shouldn't have said, you say something that you regret, and you kind of, I don't know, have a bit of an angry moment online. It's going to be attributed to you because it's you and only you. You can't be like, oh, well, it's this person who said that or did this. Or now, I'm not saying that it's commonplace for companies to do this anyway, but you see what I mean, where if it's just your name, whatever you think and feel and how you portray that online gets put back onto you, right? And I must say, like, this has been a thing on my mind recently where I've been like, you know, as visibility does get bigger in Handmade Bosses, it's almost like sometimes I feel like I can't be as authentic as I want to be because I'm going to offend someone somewhere, you know? So that is the whole spiel about using I, okay? Now let's move on to we. So saying the word we or a team or us or ourselves or language where you're kind of insinuating that there's more than one of you, it's great for those who might want to eventually pull away from the business and actually put team members in charge at some point. Have a little think about your future 1, 3, 5, 10 years ahead. And think of, do I singularly want to be running this business forever? Okay. Now, obviously, with all of these things, there's no hard and fast rules. Like, you might have plans to step away from the business, but you still want to use your name. These are just pros and cons and things to think about. Okay. So have a little think and, you know, try and think about, where do I see my business going? Now, obviously, if it is just you, you might have your other half. You might have a friend, a family member, a kiddo, a partner, whatever, working alongside with you. And that's fine. I really don't think that people who are like, I don't ever really want to, you know, hire a big expensive team, but I wouldn't mind hiring a friend or a family member or my other half or something like that. I don't think those guys really need to worry because it's still keeping it fairly like within the family, within the friendship, within your world, right? But I do think that there is something to be said for thinking ahead. And this is something that I think about myself actually on a regular basis because I named Handmade Bosses. It's a brand name, but it's my face that's attached to the brand. Sometimes I do feel fairly limited because I have got a brand name and there are things that I want to share that perhaps don't fit in with that brand name. So there then becomes a little bit of something around that because you're thinking, right, okay, so am I going to limit myself? And this is what I'm talking about here mainly, is don't limit yourself by starting off on the we train or the I train if it's not going to be applicable to you later on down the line. Okay. So saying we is better for those using brand names. So Handmade Bosses, we are a team and we are a team. There are 3 people in like the main team. Then we have contractors and things that help us as well. So we are a team. But when it was just me, I couldn't authentically say we because it didn't feel right to me. It was just me who was doing everything. Yeah. But saying we sometimes is better when you are using a brand name because you are portraying yourself as a brand online. It also sounds more professional, but it does have the trade-off of feeling a little bit impersonal, a little bit corporate. And I think sometimes that can actually muddy the whole handmade product side of things. Yeah. So let's walk through an example now. So Mel makes dog collars and has a brand name rather than using her own name. She actually has a vision to hire team members later on down the line and reduce her own time spent working in the business as time goes on. People have really gotten to know her brand name rather than her own name. So that is where Mel actually says, you know what, I'm going to say we because I want to really push the brand rather than just me, myself and I. That's where I'm going to start saying the words we. So let's go through some pros and cons of using we now. So pros, it can make your business appear larger and more established, which as we've already talked about can help you with wholesale, corporate orders, those kinds of opportunities where people that are reaching out to find you might appreciate businesses that seem more established, more professional, more formal. Yeah. It also conveys a more professional image, right? When you're saying we, sometimes it can make people go, oh, okay, like there's backup there. If Mel is off sick, it's not just Mel making my dog collar, it's like a whole team going on there. Yeah. It also allows for an easier transition if the business does expand. Because you've been using we the whole time, it's not all of a sudden going to be like a really weird thing where you're like, you've gone from saying I versus we. I feel like I kind of went through a period like that myself where I was saying I, and then I started saying we. And I do honestly feel like there was a bit of a disconnect there. Something changed overnight when I started saying we. And I think it was kind of like the energy that I was coming at it change. And I think people were like, I know for certain that people do pick up on those kinds of things. But if the business does expand, it makes it so much easier because it's not this big to-do because you've always been saying we, okay? Now, some cons are it may be seen as inauthentic if it's known to be a one-person business. So if you're sat there and you're like, yeah, you know, Steph, it is just me. It's not really anybody else, not even like on the odd day here and there. And if it's well known that it's just you, it might sound a little bit weird if you're saying we when it's not, it's just I. And if it's common knowledge that it is just you, people might be like, oh, I don't really vibe with that. Are they trustworthy because they're saying this, and this? It can be a bit of a juggling act. It also, like I said, could be perceived as misleading if there is truly no team. Now, I think this is kind of up to people's opinions on this because, you know, if you do have someone that comes and helps you on busy times, then I guess, strictly speaking, you do have a team. You can say we. But if like 99% of the time it is just you, then maybe just think twice. Also, the last con here is that it may create distance between the business owners and people seeking to buy the products. So if you're saying we, especially with handmade, sometimes people are coming to Etsy or coming to look for handmade goods because they're wanting to kind of get away from all of that. They're wanting to get away from the Walmart and the H&M and the big box stores out there. So if you then start kind of mimicking the language of your larger big box store competitors who you're actively trying to compete against and you're actively trying to say, no, my products are better because they're handmade, could that then put a bit of a gap and a bit of a disconnect between you and them? Remains to be seen. So guys, I really hope that was helpful. I really hope that finally that might have answered the great I versus we debate for you and your business. If you could do me a massive favour and leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, that would be amazing. It just helps these to be seen by more people, and we do put a lot of effort into the podcast, so that would be awesome if you wouldn't mind doing that. But for now, my lovely handmade bosses, I will see you next week for another podcast episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to How to Be a Handmade Boss. And if you're eager to boost your Etsy sales within just 7 days, then be sure to join my most popular free training at handmadebosses.com/conversion. You can also find the link in the show notes as well. Keep an eye out for our next episode where we'll be continuing our journey towards handmade business success together. And until then, keep crafting and stay inspired because the world really does need those special creations that only you can make.